All right. Well, it's certainly an incredible honor to have Governor DeSantis make this stark announcement. All right. I'd like to welcome Governor DeSantis for this historic.
We're just trying to get it going because there's so many people.
It's unfortunate. I'd like to never seen this before. Governor DeSantis for this historic.
He's at the Air Force Academy. He actually fell down. Well, I hope he wasn't hurt. I hope he wasn't hurt. But the whole thing is crazy. You got to be careful about that. You got to be careful about that because you don't want that. Even if you have to tiptoe down a ramp, you got to tiptoe.
Welcome to Burn Babylon Burn. This is not a news show. It's an opinion show. We encourage you to do your own research. We do not give financial, legal, medical, or any kind of advice. Now enjoy the show.
Welcome to Burn Babylon Burn. I am very lucky to be visiting New York, and I've got my New York friend here, Rachel Tobias. And I guess we're going to talk about Brandon falling for like the 15th, 20th, 30th, 12th. How many times do you think Brandon has fallen since he's become our president?
Publicly, 7 times. I really hope that Bud Light, Bush, does not own, Red Bull, because that would be like a really slap in my face. I'm just saying.
Because Red Bull gives you wings and Bud Light gives you tits, so there's a little bit of a difference.
Oh my gosh. That was great.
I think you're in the clear.
You can chest feed the Red Bull to...
And he's trying to get this set up right.
Yeah.
And, the way you presented that video, my first thing is, hey, Trump versus DeSantis, because Trump is freaking hilarious, man. I just have to say it. Everything Trump does, it's so funny.
It's really refreshing after he went away for such a long time that he comes back and he's just hilarious. But we all know that I mean, I think it's preordained. I think he's going to be president again in 2024. And I think his running mate will be DeSantis.
I don't think
He went above his head on this one. He went over and he kissed the wall and he kissed the butts of all of Trump's bosses, and I think that's going to be the ticket.
To me, there's too much tie up in between them. I think it's going to be that black bachelor guy.
Scott something, right? You told me about him. I think it would be foolish to just try to find the only black person that's on your side, or maybe there's like 2 or 3, and then just go, oh, hey, well, look, we got a black guy, so vote for me. I got a black guy.
I mean, it might be, but it's going to, for us, we don't care. For the people in the middle, they do care. So I think it's going to be.
But whether people care or not, I mean, they already fortify elections. So the question is like, who is best to serve the regime and for what purpose? Because again, whether the people care or not, how much do their votes, count in this regard?
That's why we've been working on the. That's the whole reason that we've been working on the local elections is in order to defortify the elections. So Steve Bannon has been forward and front in that entire episode of this game, because that's what it's feeling like right now. So Steve Bannon has been working on that, and so this election will be able to see if Steve Bannon actually was able to solve that specific problem. That's my personal opinion.
I think that was proven in November. That was proven in November whenever Carrie Lake didn't do anything. And it was like, okay, well, if you haven't been working on Arizona, which was one of the most blatant of that situation, then you haven't been working. And so, and I have to be pretty careful because like we just got a strike on YouTube because they said that I was saying that something about elections being fake or something like that. Back when we were talking about Brazil, I was talking about Brazilian elections specifically. I wasn't talking about this one because I knew it was a big no-no in the YouTube world, but they still saw fit to strike me. But then yesterday they came out and said that they're not striking this anymore, which I think is really interesting.
See, this is where, to me, this is why elections matter. But to not just put it bluntly as elections, this is why, let me see if I can word this properly. The counterculture really matters. Because, like, for example, essentially Elon Musk bought Twitter because they were infringing on the free right of speech for the Babylon Bee. And then somebody inside of Twitter basically froze out Matt Walsh's video from the Daily Wire, What is a Woman? And then Elon Musk came back and basically said, I can't go, basically somebody resigned basically over the whole thing. So somebody resigned because they didn't get their way. And then for Twitter, there's an interesting, I can get further in that. What are your thoughts on that one, Andy?
Well, I mean, he essentially gave Twitter back to the World Economic Forum by hiring Linda Yaccarino as the CEO. So he gave it back to the World Economic Forum, so they own it again. And this was really just a publicity stunt, and it's increased Elon's stock quite a bit. He's still going around introducing DeSantis in his Satan outfit. You notice that's the icon that he used was his Knight of Lucifer thing there.
Yeah, and then you got to consider how valuable to him and to these people Neuralink is, right? To be able to control someone's mind, read their thoughts, things like this. And what better way to contribute to that than harvesting as much data as possible from social media sites, from having access to that information, right? I mean, this person is not your friend. The person that believes in this is a satanic technocrat.
So that's one. So that's one way to view it. The other way to view it is that Elon Musk is having to figure out how to get outside of the box.
4D.
What were you saying?
I don't think there's 4D chess going on. There's no like Trump chess, but continue.
He has to figure out how to get outside of the box that he's put in. So you've got Twitter that is in every single country in the world except for maybe North Korea. And so he has to figure out how to deal with all these different laws. There's so many different laws that are operating on multiple different platforms. Well, multiple different countries is a better way to say it. And so he's having to figure out how to keep Twitter inside of these different countries while also keeping the freedom of speech platform as true to as what he said.
I mean, but here's the thing. It's like, bro, I'm trying to say, then what's with all this satanic imagery and shit? Is it just coincidence or whatever? I understand someone's hands being tied. I understand doing with the legalities. I understand working within your means. But I mean, it's like, you think it's just coincidence?
So if we want to me, those are multiple. Those are two different topics. So if you want to go down the route of Target and Bud Light, I'm totally down to go with that. I can say, about like how many people do you know that drink Bud Light now still?
So we were just at Childerberg, and I didn't see one Bud Light there. I almost brought some. I came really close to bringing some because my dad was my first guest at my house and left about half a case in my fridge, and so I packed them along. But I met up with Mike the Polymath at the hotel, and he drank up all my training fluid. Shout out Mike the Polymath from the Easy Peasy podcast. Check out his book, Hey Duke 2029, right here. Good book. There you go.
But to me, the like all my friends have dropped Bud Light. They literally, I would drive out for the past 4 years. Well, apart from when I was recovering from back injury, but basically I would buy a case of Bud Light and I would bring it back over to my friend's house. And then they switched to Yingling Light immediately. Okay. They told me before I even knew about it. They were just like, no more Bud Light in this shop, period. And Bud Light is stacked in Alabama. It's stacked to the roof. That's hypothetical, but you get what I'm saying. Nobody's buying it. There's pretty much no Bud Light going out, no Budweiser, no Busch products, nothing. Yingling, wait a minute. Coors.
Are you saying that there's no Mexicans in Alabama?
They buy Modelo.
Oh, Modelo is Bud Light. It's owned by Budweiser. It is.
No. Here's an interesting one. In America, it's technically a separate company. Overseas, it's merged. In America, it's separate.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, but I've driven to the Bud Light facilities or the Budweiser facilities, and they have about 30, 40 different brands of beer in there. I don't think people are going and doing deep research on if their money is ending up in the hands of Ambev. They're just making sure that they're not drinking Bud Light.
No, Bud Light, Budweiser, Busch. There's another one. I used to drink. I used to drink IPA. I used to drink IPA, and I don't drink it anymore because it's owned by Busch as well.
Nevada?
Elysium.
Elysium. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I know Elysium. I used to work right around their brewery there in Seattle, and so a lot of these microbreweries sold out to the big names. I think even like they had this right wing beer, and it's made by Goose Island, but I'm pretty sure the Goose Island's owned by Budweiser as well. So.
Oh yeah, I don't drink anything from Goose either.
Yeah. But they own a huge amount. If they don't own it, they're distributing it. And so, I mean, I don't know if they're really losing as much money as it's being said. And I also don't think that it matters because if their ESG score goes up, then they have more access to money. It's all about access to money through BlackRock. So BlackRock says, like, hey, you did this thing for us. You did us a solid. Actually, I think that this whole thing is a psyop at this point, that they chose Dylan Mulvaney for that reason. Because Dylan Mulvaney is prominent in all this nonsense. So they chose it to kind of make an example of this situation. It's like, like Fonzie jumping the shark is a thing. Because of Happy Days, and we knew that when Happy Days got really tired was when they had this episode where Fonzie jumped the shark. Well, now it's like, now people are pulling a Budweiser, and here Twitter just did one. Twitter pulled a Budweiser and hired Yacarino, who we all know is a WEF puppet that just came directly from MSNBC.
So, well, to wrap up the Budweiser conversation, the Bud Light conversation, etc. Tim Pool, yes, I believe it was either yesterday or the day before, had a very interesting conversation on that specific topic.
Okay.
And part of I coughed, and so I muted the mic. And so part of that was in order to bottle, like Tim Pool actually looked into, from what I understand, what it takes to bottle something. And the margins are so slim. It's basically it, if you're starting off with, let's say, 100,000 cans, you're in $5 to sell it in order to even break even. $5 to break even for 100,000 cans. And then you have to go up from there. You have to get to 1 million cans.
Money is part of their business model.
Yeah. This is about demoralization. This is about sending a message and about humiliation rituals.
Well, yeah, but for Bud Light, what essentially it's the rednecks. I don't know if it's outside the redneck and country folk. Who else do you know that drinks Bud Light that just stopped?
College students, like liberal college students that want something cheap.
Did they stop?
No idea. I don't. Who knows? I have no idea.
I didn't go to college. All I know is all my buddies that drank Bud Light, basically every single one of my buddies that were veterans, they all stopped immediately.
I have no idea if people in colleges stop drinking Bud Light or anything. I don't know anyone currently in college, so I don't know.
Yeah, but my point is that their profit margin already is this slim, and they lost 30% of their stock valuation. They're hemorrhaging money at this point. They're collapsing.
So the MLB recently had these trainees that are called like the Sisterhood of Perpetual Indulgence, and I just talked about this on Union of the Unknowns. She just talked about this with Tim Kelly. They're putting this in people's faces that these drag queens that are sacrilegious, like satanic drag queens, basically, like they play up the satanic angle for sure. And this is just it's more of the demoralization method, like she was just talking about, as to say, like, we don't care. They don't care about red state money. They don't care about it.
Yeah.
The people that do are the grifters. That's who's caring about the red state money, and they're scooping it up. I mean, how long before Jeremy has a new beer for us? I mean, it's like beer and chocolate and razors are going to fight the new world order.
Right, exactly. It's just still stuff. It's all material stuff, and it's not good for you. They're not encouraging healthy eating or healthy drinking, or
But to me, that it's a different shift of things. So it's creating an alternative atmosphere. So we've got Jeremy's with the razors, Jeremy's with the chocolates, and that's the Daily Wire.
I don't think it's different because that's Daily Wire. It's the same shit. Like it's just a couple steps more complicated, but it's the same shit. It's conservative ink, right? So it's not. How is that a shift?
How's Tim Pool conservative?
He's not. I don't think he is.
We've got Tim Pool with coffee. And then he's launching coffee and he's working on his coffee houses. Have you heard about that?
Well, it was in response to Black Rifle not really being
I haven't heard.
Maybe
it's not a response. The idea basically sprung up around his. He wants to be able to have a coffee house to where instead of CNN playing on the TV, he has, he has hourly sections. He might have Scott Adams and then Dave Rubin, and then Steven Crowder. Have all these different segments where people are filling up the time, where he just airs these different people that we actually listen to. He'll have Michael Malice on there.
Oh my God! Okay, so okay. Let me explain to you. It's like, so you have like gay Jews and
gayer Jews,
gay Jew hour.
The gay Jew that
so I'm less concerned with what someone titles themselves, whether they call themselves a conservative, and I'm more concerned with, do you think, like, where does Daily Wire get all this money from? And what do they do with their money, and like that kind of stuff. That's what I'm kind of concerned about, right? You can call yourself a conservative or not a conservative all fucking day. You're saying that there's this paradigm shift or whatever, but like I don't think, so Steven Crowder, Michael Mouse, Dave Rubin, it's all like gay dudes.
All gay dudes.
I mean,
gay.
He doesn't know.
Wait, did he not know that?
He doesn't know. You can't tell.
Steven, you might be able to say Michael Mouse is gay. Maybe. Steven Crowder, definitely not gay.
Listen, my dude, it's very important Steve Crowder gets to the gym while his wife is pregnant. It's very important that Steve Crowder gets to the gym. Macho man. With his boys at the gym.
I want to be a macho man. I understand your perspective. To me, I get viewing it through that lens. I mean, to me, Michael Malice, I've never heard any confirmations that he is actually gay.
I think isn't he? He used to support like RuPaul's drag show and shit, and
because he thinks it's funny. His whole thing about drag shows, he thinks drag shows are funny, but he is entirely against the trans infringing on the kids.
Oh, I understand that. I understand the distinction here.
I don't have a problem with gay guys. I don't. I have a problem with gay guys trying to.
Why don't you have a problem with gay guys?
Andy, can you give me an answer?
That's a deep, long sigh going on. Okay, by the way, I understand. I'm just gonna say real fast. You can be like, oh, that's that person's as an individual. But let's say in the context of the conservative world and creating content and being a role model of sorts, right? And putting yourself in a position where people are giving you money to combat woke. Let's talk about that, right? Like you're gonna have a roster of, okay, so Dave Rubin for sure, Steve Crowder. I mean, questionable.
I seriously have no idea where you got Steve Crowder from. That one doesn't make any sense to me on gay. Like Michael Malice is Malice is way more likely to be gay than Steven
Crowder said himself that he used to bang dudes at one point. I mean,
yeah. Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he said it himself. He admitted he like, I don't know. He used to bang dudes at one point. He has admitted that.
Okay, if you guys can send me a clip of that, I'll listen to that.
Okay.
But anyway.
Okay.
After this show.
Like you could sort of convince me that Michael Malice is gay, but I mean, I have friends of mine that think I'm gay, and it's because I'm still a virgin. And the reason I'm still a virgin is because I want to get my finances set in order before I find a woman, before I find a wife. My finances are going to be set in order. I'm not messing around on those levels.
You've slept with less men than Steven Crowder has. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So if someone were to say, I mean, that's my point. So that's all I'm saying. If we were just compare body count of Steven Crowder and you, I'm just saying he's hooked up with more men. That's all I'm saying.
I'd be very interested to see that clip. But
we'll have our people send your people the clip in the mail.
Me, yeah, exactly. But my thing is, I care about the focus towards the end goal.
Sure.
What is the end goal? Make America great again. That's what I care about.
Steven Crowder I just have one question for you. Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Is Steven Crowder making America great again by coming in another man's ass, or like, is that not? Does that count towards making America great again, or is that not? I'm just wondering. Or is that just
freedom? Look.
What?
I don't want to put restrictions on freedom. You know, I am a libertarian in that sense.
Well, here's the problem, though. Here's the problem, because if you care about freedom for everybody across the board, right? You care about everyone's freedom. Some of those people are going to cash in their freedom to come for yours, right? So some of those people want to spend their freedom trying to take yours. So at that
point, it's no longer freedom. I mean, that's essentially the libertarian ideology. That's what Michael Malice is really good at championing. Is we're not going. The whole point of being a libertarian is don't F with us, and we won't F with you. As long as
but people effing with you right now, right? There's people not holding up their end of the bargain, like the woke people, the leftists, the whatever.
Well, we already know that.
Right.
So, and about that too, as far as like the libertarianism for the purposes of gayness or other straight liberal causes, then but they're not there. They're not in the trenches for your gun rights or your property rights or any of the other stuff. They're only there for the laissez-faire, do as you will, and all the stuff that's not really serving our society at this point. We're in the middle of a liberal mess.
Wait, Mud. So can I ask you a question though? So let's say you had your libertarian world tomorrow, right? Like everyone adhered to that philosophy or whatever, right? Everyone agreed. Would you be cool with people just openly walking around in cross-dressing, being trans or so in this libertarian world? Assuming they're adults. Let's just start with that. They're just adults, no children doing this, but they're adults doing this. Are you cool with it?
There's going to be laws put in place, and my priority of laws is everybody needs to have a gun. No restrictions on guns.
Who's enforcing these laws? So these laws, who's enforcing them?
No, it's the whole point is it's removing laws.
Oh, I see.
It's removing laws, and so because it's all going through steps. You're not getting getting to a utopia tomorrow. It's removing steps.
Okay.
It's removing restrictions. First restriction to be removed: get rid of all the illegal gun enforcements. In my opinion, they're all illegal. Just make it so that there's open carry everywhere. That way, like literally nobody is messing with me and my friends.
So Wild West, everybody's their own.
Wait, I want to hear them out. No, so okay, but I'm just saying. So my question to you, just to go back to ask you a question. So in this step-by-step process, whatever, are you cool with trans people, cross-dressers, just like openly walking around?
Not naked.
I didn't say naked, but are you cool with?
To me, that's the area that I draw the line at, and I mean, looking at it from a libertarian perspective. If they decide to be trans, that's fine. It's whenever they expose themselves to women in a locker room.
Let's just say that in this libertarian public square, whatever the hell, there's just trans people walking around, cross-dressers just walking around. They're not naked, they're not exposing themselves to people, and it's only adults, right? Let's just put it that way. Let's just make the
I don't have a problem with that. In that case, specifically in that case, I believe it is the job of the church to educate people. That is a freedom of speech area, and it's the job of the church to address the situation and to address the moral situation at that point. I don't think that's not government involvement. The area where I would draw government involvement.
You want things to be enforced privately through, let's say, like ostracizing, non-coercive means. So like ostracizing or educating or persuasion or things like that.
Exactly.
Okay. And it's interesting. So it sounds like you yourself personally don't want to say that you have a problem with it, but you're going to kind of like lean on the church existing to address it and say like, hey, this isn't appropriate.
Exactly. I personally, I believe that love is a choice. And so
what is a choice?
Love is a choice.
Okay.
And as believing that love is a choice, I believe that somebody that falls in love with the same sex has a little bit of willpower up here that's not operating. One way to say it, I feel that the person that falls in love with the same sex has some type of mental capacity, some type of basically they're trying to fall in love with themselves, if that makes sense.
Interesting. So it's sort of like an outward narcissism in a way.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
Okay, okay, so it's like a misdirected love of sorts.
Yeah, but okay. I'm not gonna, like, of course, I just expressed that I do judge people on that level, to a certain level, but I'm not going to. I don't want legally them to be judged for it.
Okay.
I don't want the government to get involved.
Sure.
It is a personal matter, and I definitely do not know I'm right.
Where is the line, though, between the personal and the public? Where is that line for you? Let's say we're not even talking about the state. We're not talking about legality. Just strictly in terms of a public square, because there would be a public square in libertarian land or whatever, because there's going to be open spaces, regardless, where people interact. My question is, yeah.
It's when you're indoctrinating the kids. That's where my line is.
So do you think someone's just walking down the street, they're cross-dressing, they're, let's say, minding their own business, as one does. They're not openly telling children to do anything, but let's just say, like, do you think this has any kind of impact or influence? There's still children going to be, assuming there's children in the public square, going to be observing these people, right?
I think we lost him. But that's interesting, though, because whenever I was a little kid, I went to, I was probably about 8. I went to a gay street fest in Houston, and there was, drag queens and Tina Turner impersonators, R.I.P. And I was 8 years old, and I at that point I was like, I want to be that. And I can see why this stuff is happening whenever you're telling kids that you can be that, and that it's okay, and that it's normal, or you can make it normal or whatever. But there was, and of course I grew out of it, and I think most people do, but now they're not giving people a chance to grow.
Yeah, do you think he'll rejoin?
I think he will. I don't think you scared him away too hard.
Because I'm trying to be as fair as possible, right? Within his standards. So I say, okay, let's hypothetically say we'll remove the state, we'll remove legality, we'll remove coercion. Is there a sense of how people should behave that maybe transcends just consent? Is there a sense of decency and social etiquette that transcends like just this libertarian ideology? And I think there is. I don't think it is good for children to be exposed to these things, because I think it is influential. I think it is confusing for them.
Right.
So even if someone were to be just existing, minding their own business, I think it could still cause problems. It's like I feel you, I hear you. I also want to be a life lawyer to human beings and be like, I want you to have as much freedom as possible, but there's this sort of overarching reality, and you don't get to be this isolated individual where your actions don't infect other people, unfortunately. That's the reality of that.
Most things are kind of a mind virus, like I said, I saw that whenever I was a kid. I'd never been exposed to that before, and then whenever I saw that, I was like, oh, I want to do that. I want that kind of attention.
So I want to go back.
I want the theatrics. I want to live that crazy life, but I didn't.
Hey, so just to keep things organized, so I was asking you on a personal level, right? Like, state aside, legality aside, coercion aside, do you think it's appropriate for children, because there's children in the public square, do you think it's appropriate for them to be exposed to see cross-dressers and trans people, even if those people are just minding their own business? They're not necessarily talking to the children, they're not necessarily saying you should be like me, but where is that sense of like social etiquette and decency that would kind of transcend just the consent-based morality underlying, libertarianism?
It's a very good question. I'm going to give you my answer, and I want to hear the pushback. First off, for some reason, at 8:50 at night, my phone overheated.
You're flying too close to the sun.
It was very weird to me. I actually put my phone in the freezer for about a minute, and it cooled down.
Like, if you take a Bud Light can, you just stick it right by your phone, it'll cool it down real quick.
Maybe. But I vividly remember, let's see here. The year, so in 2000, I visited New York City, so right before 9/11. And me and my mom, my mom was taking me around, and we were selling earrings on the side of the road as vendors. I made feather earrings, etc. So I was like 12, 13 years old. I was made $300 in an hour. It's like, wow, this is cool. And then we went into a record shop, and I remember a black lady coming out with she had contact lenses that made her look like she had cat eyes. Should that be banned? Because as a kid, I was like, I'm coming from Alabama, going up to New York City and just being like, what's going on? Should that be banned?
The autistic libertarian response would be like, well, these things are considered fraudulent, therefore they should be banned because it's presenting as one thing, but it's another. So it's categorically fraud. The non-autistic response would say, hey, there's a way that people should behave because it's considered decent, and that you are deviating from such decency to the point where you are influencing, impacting, or demoralizing others. So that's kind of the struggle there with libertarian.
But to me, that's the way you just described it is the difference between being a conservative and being a libertarian.
Well, may I ask you a question?
Let me finish. It's the desire to control others versus the desire to let others control their own life.
I understand, but in order for libertarianism to work, you have to assume that that person is a rational actor, that person is operating out of their interest, that falls under a logical, rational way. And a lot of people are not. A lot of people are real off the rails, man. As we've seen in 2020, a lot of people kind of have no basis in reality, want to be told what to do. You have kind of a problem, right? So that ethos, libertarianism ethos, really works when someone, again, is rational. But let me ask you a question, right? As a libertarian, right? Because you're a libertarian, would you say you would want to live in a high trust society? And if you want me to explain what that is, I can.
You can explain, but I'm pretty sure I know what you mean.
High trust societies are where people keep their word, they honor their contract. There's less of a sense of urgency in getting the state involved into matters. There's more of a sense of, there's trust, there's community, there's familial bonds, right? There's sort of a sense of respect.
But that's not the responsibility of the government to enforce.
No. But yes or no question. You want to live in that kind? I'm not saying whether the government should be involved.
That's where I want to live, and that's where I personally am living in one of the most high trust high trust.
Would you say the goal of a libertarian? Sorry, would you say the goal of a libertarian society is to have and live in a high trust society?
Yes, but that's not for the government to determine. That's not what I said.
No. It's okay. We're chill. Chill. Yes. So here's my question. Here's my question for you. I'm not advocating for the state. I'm not a fan of the state. I'm especially not a fan of corrupt satanic state. My thing here is, so you want to live in a high trust society, as I imagine most people do, and a libertarian society ideally would be a high trust society. My question is to you: what leads to a high trust society? What leads to trust? What leads to human beings trusting each other?
First step, guns. Lots and lots of guns. Okay. That's first step. Second step, when it comes to me and my friends, we can call each other out. Complete free speech. No regulations on speech whatsoever. Me and my friends hang out. We will BS on each other. We'll joke around with each other, but we'll also be like, okay, you're not driving home. You had too much to drink tonight. Or you need to hold yourself responsible to this contract you have, or you can't come over here.
Listen, right? You say you want free speech, absolutely, right? Across all boards, but there is some speech I think that would bother you, right? Like you wouldn't want an adult sexualize a child and
Oh, definitely not. No. Free speech.
Okay, so you don't want free speech in just unabashedly, like no restrictions, no lines in the sand. There are some things you're not cool with.
No, but it comes down to age of consent laws. And whatever the government wants to tie down age of consent laws to, that's where I will tie down the line on.
Why? Because you just said you don't want the government involved. So let's say you're a libertarian, whatever. And I'm not sitting here accusing you saying like, oh, without the state you'd be a pedo. I'm just saying, So we establish you don't want free speech across the board at all times, absolutely, in every given situation. There's some situations where it's a violation, it's not cool.
So, yes. So, for example, age of consent, etc. I don't think that we should allow people to sign up for the military until the age of at least 21.
Okay.
Same for the age of alcohol. Same for the age of smoking cigarettes. I think that's a good line to draw in the sand.
Here's the thing, though. Wait, so you value freedom, but you recognize there are times where people can abuse that freedom and misuse it and try to sexualize children, right? And stuff like that.
Exactly. So to me, there's an age of maturity. So if you want to draw that line at 18, which is generally what we draw it at, we should drop the drinking limit to 18.
But, okay, wait. And then just to be organized. So I said what leads to a high trust society, because I want to live in a high trust society. Most libertarians do. So you say guns, being available or less restrictions on them. You say your friends and you trusting each other because you have honesty. You have, what else leads to high trust?
Part of it is getting off your fucking goddamn phone. Like, whenever I hang out with my friends, if somebody is on the phone, we joke on them, because it's like, guys, there's somewhere between 4 and 20, sometimes 50 people hanging out, and if somebody's on the phone, it's like, look, you're not actually building community. Get off your phone. You're not here to just sit around people and play on your phone. You're here to have conversation.
Right. You believe in a social code of conduct, almost like a social contract. And I'm not talking about between a person and a state. There's a social contract between people. There's a social contract between me and you right now. We're giving each other a certain amount of like respect and reciprocity kind of thing, right? And you build by having honesty, you build trust by being present, and all those things, right? There's a way in which people should behave in order to establish that community and that trust.
Yeah, but even if we disagree with each other, we agree to disagree. We have those conversations. Me and my friends that I hang out with in Alabama, we can talk about anything. Yeah. We literally can talk about anything. And we basically draw the line at anything beyond weed. No meth, no hard pills, nothing like that. That's where we draw the line at, because those things make people irrational. And that's...
Yeah. Would you say that social contracts are super important? When I say that, I don't mean between people in the state, between each other. So you say social contracts, respect, the way you conduct yourself, all of that. Would you say all of that matters for building trust?
Definitely. But there's a difference between social contracts between friends and social contracts between bureaucracy.
Yes, and I already covered that. I already I'm not trying to trick you. I already went ahead and made that caveat and said we're not talking about between the state. So here's the thing. So you recognize, in order for there to be order, in order for there to be trust, everybody needs to kind of agree with what is considered decent or indecent when interacting with each other. You have to have shared values, right?
Yeah, and to me, the most strongest thing on the shared values is freedom to express yourself.
Within reason, though. Within reason. You don't believe in freedom to express yourself with no boundaries, because some motherfucker is going to come along and say, well, my version of expressing myself is talking to children however I want, right? You do believe in boundaries and a line in the sand, and you don't believe in freedom absolutely with no boundaries.
Exactly. But this is the way that I would say that. Whenever we're dealing with individuals in an honest way, we're not going to, it gets rid of the riffraff.
I think you mean rational though, not just honest. Because someone could say, "Hey, man, I honestly really just like his." Like someone can be honest, but you're like, okay, it's not that they're lying.
I mean, if somebody molests one of my friend's kids, you're not going to see that person ever again.
Sure. But I'm saying you do have standards, you do have boundaries, and you have a sense of decency. And that's all.
But to me, that's freedom of speech is key, because that way you're allowed to talk about it. If somebody starts, and this is also why I think.
But everything has conditions. You believe in conditions. You don't believe in absolute freedom at all times. You believe that you have that freedom as long as you respect these certain rules and conditions.
Exactly. But that's also why for freedom of speech, as long as it's not state funded, which is trannies going into public spaces, etc. To me, it's them being able to voice their opinion, and other people on Twitter, for example, being able to voice their opinion in opposition to it. We need to have the conversation happening, because whenever the conversation happens, it rounds off the rough edges. It gets that stuff out of the way.
But you agree someone can make a violation of this freedom of speech without being a state actor, without anything to do with
If somebody rapes a kid, if a guy rapes a kid, he should have his twig and berries cut off.
So the metrics for what's good or bad isn't just, is it private or is it public, right? That's too limiting as to whether something is good or not. Someone can do terrible things in private, right? Would you agree with that?
If you're violating somebody else's space, over. And if you're violating somebody that does not have the ability to make a decision for themselves, it's over. I personally would like to raise that age to 21. That includes joining the military. But if we're going to keep it at 18, it should be 18 across the board. That includes alcohol.
I understand.
In my opinion.
So you believe in social contracts amongst people. You believe that there are boundaries to freedom and that there are certain social standards of the way that people should conduct themselves. And it isn't limited on just whether something is private or public, but is it decent? Is it moral? Is it good?
So for the decent and moral, so whenever it goes into the trans and into the gay stuff like that, that should be something that is a community,
What if you have a community of pedos, though, and people who are trans? Like
pedos, that's the whole thing. Pedos, nothing. You do not indoctrinate kids.
Who gets to determine the age of consent?
I said 21 is where I would like it to be.
You, the dictator of your libertarian land, get to dictate the age.
Well, I mean, technically, for if I was dictator, guys, it would be 21, women 18. Women mature faster than guys, and they also have a shorter time span of having children. Guys, they mature later on. Technically, guys really mature about 24 to 25. So I would like guys, if I was ruler of the universe, guys have the age of consent at 25. Women have the age of consent at 18.
Where does your sense of morality and right and wrong come from?
Scripture.
From the Bible?
Science. Yeah, no, I study the Bible for 4 hours a day for 12 years. No, 3 hours a day for 12 years. Don't let me lie. 3 hours a day for 12 years.
Do you think it's being a good Christian to be tolerant of other people's, like, nonsense? I guess.
I mean, almost no Christian actually follows through on don't have sex before marriage.
Sure. We all do the best we can. Obviously, we all have like an ideal and a North Star of what we know we should aim for, and then obviously we all struggle in our own ways, whatever. But one of my issues I have with libertarianism is not everyone's going to agree on what is or is not considered a threat or aggression or a violation, and also
I totally understand that.
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose of not forcing your opinions on others, but actually having a discussion about it.
Here's the thing, though. When you tell the pedo that they can't sexualize the child, you are forcing your morality on somebody else. You are forcing your opinion on somebody.
That's just crossing a line.
Of course.
There's certain lines that are
established. Sometimes you should take away
those lines. Look. If a guy if a 17-year-old boy sleeps with a 14-year-old girl, well, no, let's say an 18-year-old boy sleeps with a 14-year-old girl, I don't think it should be. I don't think he should be, castrated. If a 20-year-old guy sleeps with a 7-year-old girl, done.
No, I understand. I'm just establishing that you do have, like I said, I know I'm repeating, that you do have boundaries and a sense of decency. So the point
I'm not an anarchist.
Uh-huh.
Andy, step in. You need to say something here. Help me out.
Well, as far as I go on this is that things are
get in there.
Changing all the time. If none of us would be here if two 12-year-olds hadn't got together like 1,000 years ago. And at that time, really, what was considered okay was, can they have children was the determining factor at that point. And then, things have changed throughout time, and I don't think that there is an age of consent actually in the Bible, right? I don't think that it specifically said an age of consent, and in fact, there's all these religious groups, the polygamists in Utah, for instance, they have child brides. That's pretty twisted and sick,
But I agree with you exactly there. It's twisted and sick.
Can I ask something? Are you a libertarian of the context of like you don't want the state to tell you what to do so that you can go about being as best of a Christian as you can? Is it more like that, or is it just kind of like you want freedoms, you want other people to respect your freedoms and you theirs? Or like, I'm trying to understand where you reconcile. Are you a Christian?
Oh yeah, I'm a Christian.
I'm trying to reconcile and I'm aware there's different denominations and that could mean anything, but I'm just wondering where you reconcile being a libertarian or Christian at the same time.
I'm a Baptist-Costal.
So that means what?
Very short version of that.
Pronouns. That's your preferred pronouns. I understand. But what does that mean?
Very short version of that. The Arminianism perspective is we ask God to solve our problems.
Oh, so it's like religious welfare or some kind.
Yes, that's a good way to say it. And the Baptists are, we expect God to help those that help themselves.
I like that one a lot more, even though it does bother me because God always takes credit for shit. But it's like, I understand the second one is probably a lot more practical.
So Baptist-Costals, so Pentecostals are the Armenians. Pentecostals are, we're waiting on God to solve our problems. Mm. So the reason I call myself a Baptist-Costal is because I do believe in the gifts of healing and speaking in tongues.
Okay.
So I've prayed over people before and they've got healed. I've prayed over people before and they've fallen out in the spirit. Just two people.
Here's a question. What do you do would you say there's a possibility that you can have libertarians that are like possessed by demons? Do you think that's...
Of course.
Okay. So what happens when a libertarian's possessed by a demon? He's like no longer operating as within an agency of an individual. He's no longer operating as like a rational actor. He's possessed by a demon.
You're viewing libertarian as a religion rather than as an ideology. To me, a libertarian falls squarely inside of the area of don't tread on me. That's what it is. Don't tread on me, leave me alone, and I'm going to respect you. That's what a libertarian is. I mean, Andy, would you agree with that statement, or would you have an amendment on that statement?
Well, I kind of, yeah. I could see that slogan being a fine, like, easy way to describe it, but to me, it's mostly the don't hurt other people and don't take their stuff that everybody says these days.
I mean, I think if you're a Christian, if you consider yourself to be a Christian, again, I know denominations, then you have the obligation or responsibility to behave as a Christian through the world and to not put up with other people's nonsense. You can't determine what is someone else's heart. That's for God to judge. But at the same time, you can judge other people as acting in accordance with Christian morality or not. And I don't see how. I think because if you were to say to me, like, I want the freedom to be a Christian, then I understand where you can reconcile libertarianism with, if the state was imposing on your freedom of religion, then I understand why you'd be a libertarian. But like the whole value of freedom kind of like contradicts freedom and wanting agency kind of contradicts like the moral obligations as a Christian to adhere to like God's principles. So those are sort of in conflict with each other. Unless you were to say, I want the freedom to be a Christian, I want the freedom to do the right thing. That's the only way that those two things don't come.
Okay, are you a Christian?
No, I'm not a Christian.
Okay, so that makes a lot more sense. That makes a lot more sense. From the perspective of a Christian, Catholics view this, obviously Catholics view this differently, definitely in the past. It's not my job to force my beliefs on you.
Why not?
It's my job to persuade you.
Yeah, but what if I'm like not all there in the head? How are you going to persuade me? And if I'm possessed by a demon, now you're competing with the demon. So
you saying you're not a Christian makes way more sense for your questions now. It's not my job. It's not my job to force you to do something. It's my job. It's my job to persuade you.
Yeah, but what if you're throwing, but I'm throwing something on the field. I'm saying, hey, okay, it's your job to persuade me, but I'm possessed by a demon. So do the rules still apply the same? Do you interact with me differently? Do you treat me differently? Or do you just go, sucks, you're possessed by a demon. I'm still going to try to persuade you, even if that demon fights me. Like,
it's generally possession by demons. I'm not that sure that really happens, quote unquote, that much. But the way I would say it
wait, real quick. What was the most common miracle that Jesus performed?
Healing.
It was rebuking demons. He rebuked.
No, it was healing.
And he was always doing that, and
it was healing, unless you count the fact that he threw the demons out of all the pigs, and in that case you can count the number of miracles that Jesus performed was exorcising demons.
But you agree, let's say you're dealing with a pedo or something, you agree that you have an obligation that transcends just persuasion, yes? They're acting on it. They're acting on it, right?
That's the line that's going to be drawn. There's no way, if anybody messes with any of my friends' children, that they're going to survive.
Right, and there are people trying to mess with your friends' children if they use YouTube.
No, they're not. They know. That's why we all have guns. They know not to cross that line.
No. But let me ask you a question, right? Let's say your friend. Let me say your friend lets their kid watch TV, lets them go on YouTube, whatever. You got guns up to the wazoo, but you let your child. Your friend lets their child go on YouTube without any sort of guidance or parental, restrictions or anything like this. There's stuff that the kid could get into and be persuaded by, and
only if it's on certain TV shows. My friend does not. My friend's 12-year-old daughter. My friend's 12-year-old daughter does not have a phone, and he is not giving her a phone until she's 15.
They have commercials on Nickelodeon that are grooming.
I know they do. I mean, there's only so much that you can protect. I understand that there's certain ramifications that we have to put around these situations.
There's some things that your guns are good. I think people should have them. I'm not in disagreement to that at all. But I think guns only get you so far, because I think a lot of libertarians recognize physical aggression. They don't necessarily recognize like subversion or psychological or emotional aggressions or attacks.
Well, exactly. But that's why we're trying to build out the parallel economy. That's why, the Daily Wire is working on kids' TV shows right now. That's why Tim Pool is building coffee shops. That's why
that supports Steven Crowder. That's constantly cross-dressing for whatever reason, because he's cross-dressing to fight the. Explain to me how that works.
If you want to call his Bane costume cross-dressing,
no, he's got plenty of costumes where he was like wearing a dress. He's asking other people. He asked Owen Benjamin to wear a dress, like, or skirt or whatever.
It's comedy. That's the whole thing.
Hey, listen, man, I do comedy. I understand. I do stand-up comedy.
It's making fun of the situations. I mean,
is it though, or is it contributing? Is it adding to the pile of nonsense? When you turn on conservative TV, you want to see more nonsense, right?
It's helping. It's helping because the biggest way that it's helping is that we're actually, what's happening is we're drilling into the society the most famous shows, the most important shows that are being watched are the shows that are presenting and pushing forward liberty, not authoritarianism.
Well, here's the thing, though. But you said there are certain restrictions on freedom, as there should be. There's certain standards. So when you say you want freedom, you need to admit and be honest. I want freedom with strings attached. I don't want absolute freedom.
Don't screw with kids, and don't screw with my personal ability to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, if your pursuit of happiness is screwing with kids, but
don't you have, as a Christian, don't you have a moral obligation that transcends just personal happiness? Don't you have an obligation to the Lord and like a certain?
But that's the whole reason I'm not pushing my perspective on you. Like for me, I go out of my way every single time I can. Well, I'm always helping one person that. I'm lifting one person up at a time. It was the best lesson my dad gave me, because at one point I was helping 4 people live in my houses.
Can I ask you a question? Were you allowed?
Let me finish with the idea.
Fair.
At one point I was helping 4 different people live in my houses, and I could barely stay above water financially. And my dad told me the Good Samaritan helped one person at a time. And so that's a rule I stay by right now. I help one person at a time.
Okay.
But that's not, as a Christian, that's what I do. I help one person at a time as much as I can. I don't overstretch myself, but I don't ask you to do the same. That's my personal action.
Well, were you alive? Okay, question. Were you alive during 2020?
Yes.
Okay, good. So did you see, like, would you have ever thought in a million years that anyone in America would actually like lock down and shut down churches and restrict freedom of speech and like run roughshod over the Constitution so blatantly the way that it happened, right? With all the guns in America, with all the freedom, with all the underlying like ethos of fuck the state that we have here as opposed to other countries. Would you have ever thought that 2020 would have looked the way that it did?
No. And I lost $100,000 because of that.
Okay, so here's the thing. So would you agree that 2020 showed that a lot of people are kind of like off the rails and not rational and not coherent and will just do what the state tells them, unfortunately?
All right, so for my period of time inside of that span, I actually, for 18 weeks, could not walk because of the lockdowns. I got so stressed out that my right leg did not work for 18 weeks. So I did not actually see the full fallout. I got down to Florida and then I was like, you want me to wear a mask? What? How do I buy a mask? You can't come into the store without a mask. How do I get a mask if I can't come into the store? Like, that was my dilemma. That was a complete violation of the Constitution. 100%.
Okay, but my point is, for me personally, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I would have never expected in America in the year of our Lord 2020, in a million years, that like so many people, even red states, would lock down, shut down, want masks, whatever you think COVID was or wasn't, because I don't want to get into that debate. I would never thought that churches would have shut down. You know what I mean? Like, I never would have thought, with all the guns, I never thought that authoritarianism would be at full force working in America in 2020. And people who even now, I mean, granted, I'm in New York, but there's people now who want more, who are enthusiastic about it, who don't think anything bad happened, that think that it was justified. So my point here is, to me, and you won't know 100% unless you speak to people on an individual basis, but to me, the general consciousness of the country and the people is not anywhere near like ready for libertarianism. Like, to me, it's not.
No, they're not. I don't have. I agree with you on that.
But I think it goes beyond persuasion. Like, so many people just wanted to be told what to do and still do. There's just going to be a chunk of the population.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. People want to be told what to do. I mean, I'm consistently trying to give away, not give away, but if somebody's willing to work for me, hey, sure. Here's 44% of my lawn care business. You take care of you take care of the labor, and if you grow it, you start off 22 an hour is what it would average out to. And every crew that you can manage, every additional crew you can manage, you're going to make an extra $10 an hour. If you can manage it, you can grow it, because I have other businesses that I'm trying to work on.
Yeah.
But nobody is responsible enough to take it on. I'm not saying the libertarian way is.
It's got to be you, Mud. That's the thing you got to learn about.
It has to be you or your children. If you have children, that's it.
But you want somebody that can take your company, raise him.
Yeah, but that's kind of the whole thing, is raising the person. But
you can't raise other people's kids, and it sounds like that's what you're trying to do with the guy that's not working out.
Yeah, you're like taking him under your wing, and he's not appreciating it or whatever.
But that still falls under my Christian belief of I am going to help out one person at a time, and I believe that God's going to watch over me.
So I think you're a good person. I don't doubt it for a second. I'm just saying that, to me, the sad reality of 2020 was there's so many people that are like nowhere near the level of consciousness you would need to have a high trust society, that you would need to like be responsible, because the other flip side of freedom is you need responsibility.
So that's so if I was having a conversation with Dave Smith and Dave Rubin,
Jew in a room. No, Dave Smith isn't gay, but that's a lot of Jew in a room. Continue.
If you want to go with that perspective, fine. There's a lot of Jew in a room. That's definitely true. But
surrounded on all sides.
Dave Smith and Dave Rubin, I would fall more on the lines of Dave Rubin, because I believe it's an incremental growth of understanding that establishes a better community.
Are you cool with Dave Rubin getting a surrogate to have his child so that two men can raise a baby?
I'm not. I'm like Ben Shapiro. I'm not exactly cool with it, but I feel like there's a better fight to be had. It's not worth arguing over that. Like, we can argue over that when every single person in the U.S. has a gun. We can argue over that.
I'm not for people that I don't want to have guns having guns. I'm all for freedom, but I'm not for equality.
I don't want my enemies to have guns.
I don't want my enemies arms. I don't, and that's why it's like I'm not.
My mom is an enemy of mine to a certain extent.
But someone I don't want to have her have gun then.
I mean, she already lost one.
I want her to have one for her own protection. If everybody has a gun, nobody messes with it.
And she lost it because she wasn't responsible enough with it.
I don't want anybody to mess with her. I get it. I mean, that's a good
freedom
question.
to own requires the responsibility to
care and maintenance.
Yeah, and by telling some random dude exactly where it is not responsible. So she's not responsible enough to own a gun, and she was taught a very important lesson. And there you go. And
if everybody in Ukraine had a gun, would Russia have invaded Ukraine?
Probably, because they could still kick their butts. The thing is, Russia's been handling them with kid gloves. They haven't even brought the real forces in.
Again, Mud, how many people in the U.S. have guns, and yet, like, red states still locked down and still had masks and still had bullshit, and, like...
Red states, look, for the lockdowns, I was okay with 20 days, 2 weeks to curb the spread.
I wasn't okay with any lockdown.
But no, I get it.
It wouldn't have happened. That was the 14 days that they said.
And it had like no positive impact at all. It just ruined lives.
But we didn't know what was happening.
Oh, it's so frustrating because common sense would tell you it doesn't fucking work. So frustrating.
We didn't. I was not getting any checks through the mail because they didn't know if COVID was spreading through.
I get it. Paper. Listen, but there are certain fundamentals and principles about viruses. They don't all behave the same, and I understand better safe than sorry. But like common sense would tell you that lockdowns don't work. That like you can't quite. That trying to like get human beings to all adhere to the same thing like doesn't work. That like trying to get people to wear masks the correct material in the correct way like does not work, and that this is going to cause way more harm than good. Like that's so obvious to me. And that's so frustrating.
To me,
people don't know this.
The 2 weeks to slow the spread, I think, was a rational first response.
No, and because you have to consider economic. No, you have to consider the way that the life.
Because of those two, you have to remember, from my perspective, I lost $100,000 because of that perspective.
Some people lost their lives and their jobs and everything because people weren't going to get medical.
I walked for 18 weeks and I had 2 years in rehab for my legs.
Was it worth it? Was the 2 weeks worth it?
It was. I would have been able to recover if they did not extend it beyond the 2 weeks. But it's still.
They were never gonna. Why would they ever just keep it 2 weeks and call it? No fucking way. You know how much control you have? You lock down the population, get them to do whatever you want. You know, just comply and it'll all be over soon. Like, why the hell would they lock people only for.
It's a good point, but that's why we have states and we're a republic, and so maybe
and the red states locked down too. Very frustrating.
Maybe a better response would have been to just lock down New York State and all the big imports of the things. It's a very good question.
That's what just happened. You as a libertarian just want to come for me in my state. You just want to aggress against me, and that's
in New York. Okay, I didn't know you were in New York. But
hey, real quick on New York, I now that I've been to New York State, it is totally different than New York City.
Oh, absolutely.
So maybe you can just lock down New York City and just leave it.
Well, I mean, that's the whole. The whole point is that the states. But like my biggest thing is that the states are laboratories. And so if the states are laboratories, let them work like laboratories. Get the focus.
I love how you just keep deferring. Like you just keep deferring and assuming this. Like you just keep deferring to certain, let the states decide, let the people decide. And then you're not kind of saying what it is that they're deciding. You're sort of ignoring.
My thing is, look, I know I do not have all the answers. That's my perspective.
Sure.
I do not have all the answers. I don't have the answer to where if I take my hair off, it gets poofy. It was this way, now it's going that way. I don't have all the answers to life. And that's the perspective I'm approaching these topics from. Get the government more local. Let the local government have more power.
I agree. And also because local governments and local people understand much more what is best for their state. They understand the local culture. They understand how people are going to respond. When you have one size fits all, it doesn't work. When you treat everywhere like New York, it doesn't work. Like, I understand that entirely. The problem is the World Economic Forum is putting its little tentacles into everything where they want to control local government and politics. And I think locality is amazing. Localism is 100% the move. It's just frustrating because I see the World Economic Forum try to influence local VAs and other things and really tip those scales and trying to launder their power through as many separations as possible.
Exactly. And that's why we need to make sure that we need to get the powers centrated locally so that these big conglomerations of people do not have power to rule over us. If my mom had the decision, she would take all my guns away and declare me insane because I voted for Trump. Same thing for my dad.
And then Trump's just like a globalist who sold his daughter that he wanted to fuck to a Jewish family. Yeah, and it's unfortunate.
And to me, that's where I completely disagree with you. I think Trump is the best president we've had in the last. Well, he definitely made mistakes, but I think he's the best president we've had in a long time.
But Operation Warp Speed, him pushing the vaccine,
and not stopping. Like now, his attacks on DeSantis are that Florida did a bad job, and we were using Florida as
he said New York did a better job than Florida, which is like insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's like there's that persuasion game. So I rebuilt 3 houses last year. And then I told a customer, I had a customer come to me and was like, hey, my house, well, I found a customer in my house. It's like, oh, my grandma's house burnt down and I want to rebuild it. Can you do it? And I said, yes. Then I'm getting to the point. Then I got to that. I brought this contractor over to the house that's going to oversee the whole project. And he pushed on one of the brick walls, and the brick wall almost fell over when he pushed on it. And I quoted the guy $100,000, and he was like, 150. It's $150,000. And Trump, for Trump, it's all, he's a business guy, and so for a business guy,
the odd way of showing it. Is it good business to try to kill off half the population with like your poison?
No, he was trying to solve a problem. That's what he was. That's where
too
his
much population.
But I get it. I totally understand your perspective. But his thing is, I'm going to solve this problem, and that's the way that these things, from a business perspective, he was doing everything he could to solve the problem.
Cutting down an economy is not good for business. Here's what it's insulting to call it unforeseen consequences. I hate calling things that because it's like, hello, common sense, but that these things would happen. But the problem is, if you lock people down for 2 weeks, right, you might mean well. However, our lifeblood is so attached to that fake money that it's like the economic destruction would be way more harmful in the long term than anything that happens in the short 2 weeks. And I understand we didn't know. I understand better safe than sorry. But my point here is, you have such an integrated society that's so dependent on the Federal Reserve and all the institutions that you probably hate, that it's like we have to recognize, oh shit, like people are so dependent on these structures that we shut everything down, we're going to kill way more people in the long run.
But part of the outgrowth of that was people started to fight back.
How?
We've got locals. We've got Rumble. Truth Social doesn't really matter. Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Flanders flops back and forth. Elon Musk bought up Twitter. The Daily Wire grew, 2 extra businesses. Tim Pool is growing 2 other businesses as well. It's us,
but it's not them.
Listen,
those guys are all big money.
Dave Rubin is rebuilding civilization by hiring a surrogate to give birth to his child so that 2 men can raise a baby. So, like, absolutely.
If we're talking on a political podcast about situations, I'm not going to complain about somebody being gay. I'm not. It's, to me, that's their
he's gay,
choice.
but it's choices. It's him creating a baby out of he's not adopting children that need a home. He's creating a baby to put that child in the presence of 2 men as the father, or as the family, as their family. So like, and I'm just saying, like, once you accept someone's freedom and you accept that that's like, acceptable, then where is that line of, where's that line of what's a good idea? Or
here's the line. Okay. No harm to others. A. B.
Is there harm being done to that child?
The freaking governor of California is sending him onesies. I mean, like, the kids are totally fine.
Target onesies with tux.
So if the governor,
no, that was
Newsom. Are you saying
Target.
Newsom? You're saying Newsom did that?
No. Ron DeSantis
Oh.
California.
Yeah, he meant Florida. He
Oh, okay.
But,
so you're saying like, okay. Got it.
Yeah, Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, sent Dave Rubin's children onesies. This is the way I say it. My dad is always shot for the stars, and it's only recently that he's been figuring out how to build a ladder to get there. It's building a ladder to get to the stars. I'm not going to fix everybody's problems. Let's solve one big issue at a time. And to me, my first big issue is freedom of speech and right to bear arms.
Sorry, we got another person arriving here. We got to wrap up here really soon. What? So you were saying freedom of speech and the right to bear arms?
Yeah, to me, it's about building a ladder, not shooting for the stars. I can't expect everybody to be on my page with my beliefs. It's up to me locally to persuade people. That's why freedom of speech is so important. And the way we protect freedom of speech is the right to bear arms. Those are the two important things. I cannot force you to believe something. And
yeah, I get it. Okay, I get where you're going there. We've talked about this before. It's just not the war. You know what I mean?
Well, but the point that I was bringing up was it's the ladder to get there.
Okay.
You don't shoot for the stars. You build a ladder. It's one rung at a time. You plan it out. You're not going to get everything you want. It's a period of time to build it out.
Well, let's wrap up. Do it.
This has been Burn, Babylon Burn, episode 54 with Andy O, Bud, and Rachel. Have a blessed one, guys.